Should come to order, please.
You can't continue.
Yeah.
Welcome to the first meeting for 2020. Welcome everybody today. With the secretary, please call roll.
Of course. We have two vacant positions, and then Todd Hobler,
Here.
Lynn Lenahan.
Here.
I am here, Terry Phillips. Here. Jeff Stone.
Here.
Susie Swartz. Absent, Denise Wilson. Here. And Albert Chu.
Here.
We have a quorum.
Who would like to read the mission statement? Carrie, would you like to read the mission statement? Which is right on top of right under the agenda.
Oh, yes. SUNY Erie Community College meets the needs of a diverse student body and contributes to regional economic vitality by providing high-quality, flexible, affordable, and accessible educational programs committed to student success.
Thank you very much. Okay, we will first deal with the consent agenda. Are there any questions or comments on that?
The only question I had about, on the consent agenda had to do with the location of our graduation, our commencement
Yes.
ceremony. And I take it that that's been a traditional place that we've done it over
has.
the years, and that's because of size and capacity.
Yep.
The only comment I would have is if there was some place, if there were to be such a place here that we could do it, we would save money. But I have, presuming that that has been examined and we cannot do that?
Right, we've gone around, so when I arrived, I didn't like the idea of going to Buff State and being in an auditorium, but they gave me the history of various venues we've tried, but given the size of our class, which is considerable, that's the only venue that is affordable to us.
All right, and I know it's another SUNY affiliate, so we're
Yeah.
probably doing all right as
Especially
far as
with
cost.
technology, we actually have a really good agreement with them, and so
Okay.
they provide a lot of that in-house, and
Just wanted to get a little background on that. I did attend commencement last spring and it was well handled. I don't have any complaint about it, but I just wanted to ask that question.
Good.
What about the South Campus Stadium?
oh, outside,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
why not?
Yeah, we
It
can
rains.
consider that. It's a totally, obviously because of weather and it's a different, you have to plan almost 2 or 3 times as much
In May. but
contingencies and,
it's going to work.
yeah, wind, snow,
Could be in May.
late night snow.
I just know when I graduated many years ago, we had primary plan was on the Great Lawn on the campus. Alternate plan was in the basketball stadium.
Okay, yeah, we couldn't fit the students, obviously. It'd be, we'll look at that.
I was just spitballing.
Yeah, we can consider that.
It runs to about 17, 18 to rent the place, and then you have to pay for the staging and so forth. It's, it's under 25,000, but that's,
25,000.
that's 25,000. So I would say take a look at any possible alternative, not saying we should leave there,
Right.
but just make sure that we fully examined all the alternatives to see if there's a more
Yeah.
cost-effective way to have a good commencement ceremony.
Yeah, yeah.
We will. Great stuff. Now I'll entertain a motion to move in a second the consent agenda. Do we have a second?
Second?
All those in favor?
Aye.
Item is approved. Item 6 are approved. Thanks so much. We will now move on to committee briefings. Start with Budget and Audit. Chairman Stone.
Thank you, Chairman Lenahan. The Budget and Audit Committee met on 3 weeks ago, January 9th. We began by receiving the audit and related materials from Drescher and Malecki relating to ASC, Auxiliary Services Corporation. I would characterize that as clean. Net assets were down slightly year over year at ASC. The side letter from the auditors contained a standard warning that we should always be focusing on cybersecurity. Sue has advised that we already have measures in place for that, but I think that's being added to almost every advice letter we're getting from auditing firms saying they're worried about that, do what you can. So I think this would be a good place to say, all throughout the college, a priority should be made on cybersecurity. I know at our firm it's a very significant thing, even to the point of sending out emails that ask people to click on things and then sending them a good email back when they don't. Those, I'm sure there are others better versed in how to do it, but that's the only thing that was in the letter.
Just for the board's information, We do have mandatory training for cybersecurity for all our faculty and staff. They get that through emails and they have to go through a program. We also are part of SUNY's cybersecurity protocol, and so we have insurance for any sort of things that might ransomware or other things as well.
That's a good, I'm glad you mentioned that, Dan, because I was thinking about the hospital, when this, the Erie Medical Center. And they had, of course, a very bad situation. I don't know how much of it ultimately was covered by insurance, but some, maybe all, but it really disrupted their operations.
Yeah.
So I don't think this is news to anybody who works in a highly computerized major employer environment like the college, but there's some repeating. Quickly, looking at ASC, they had a quarterly loss of about $97,000 versus a budgeted loss of $121,000. Generally, it's a losing proposition because it's providing services for the students. There is decreased payroll at the North and South Child Care Centers because the North director retired, and there was some restructuring associated with that. Revenue at City Child Care is up $10K, so there's more going on down here. Food sales lagging behind budget at South and City by about $15,000, up at North by about $7,000. Why? Because of additional breakfast hours and the extension of afternoon service in the cafeteria. Albert can probably speak to that. So your net food sales are down overall by about $7,500, 7,500, but expenses are down by $6,000, so the negative budget variance there is about 1,500, so not too substantial. Everyone is aware that the bookstore sales are suffering as a result of greater turn toward online resources and away from hard copy books. Susan is very aware of that, and there is an arrangement at the bookstore that has been drifting downward. 15% share of revenue is going to the college. That's not getting bigger, it's getting smaller, and will continue to. Kate?
Is that the college support levels in September, October, November? So with huge variables, is that why?
No, the college support that you're looking at in that report refers to the part of the ASC budget where we give money back to the college to be spent on, most of it's food and beverage type things, recruiting for high school students, some staff development training. Those are college support lines that are governed by various administrators in the college.
It just seems if we had a comparison to the year before, it would help to understand if it's a time of year change that is driving that, or if it's something we need to be concerned about. Because when it goes from $689 to $72,000, back down to $4,000 in a 3-month period, it's a huge shift.
That's just the timing. Well, the
That's
college
what I'm saying. If
support
we could
in-
see last year's, you could see that that's generally a
Well, the college
trend.
support in October is the payment that Jeff referred to, the facilities payment. That's considered college support as well. The rest of it is just basic usage, as I said, by the various administrators. So it just depends on when they have things coming in. We budget it based on 12 months and split it 1/12 per month, but that's not necessarily how it's used. So that would explain the variances.
And can I ask one other question? When you were talking about the cybersecurity, has there been a risk assessment performed, done, anticipated?
Yes, we had taken cyber risk insurance of our own well over a year ago, January, I think it was, of 2018. We started with our cyber risk insurance and had our agent as well as our bank representatives take a look at the measures that are in place to protect everything. And we also take the college training that Dan referred to. All of the ASC staff goes through that cyber risk training.
Thank you.
So we received the first quarter financial report. It's in your packet. I don't think anything beyond what I've mentioned stood out to me. We then received from the foundation a report of their activities, the donation list that we always get. We look at that. It's in your package. You'll note that there was an anonymous donation in excess of $5,000. I thought that was nice to see. There's an array of goals and metrics to spread out for the foundation in your packet. We went over those. My overall impression was that they are fairly nascent. They are not yet fully fleshed out. They're somewhat aspirational, but there is an effort going on at the foundation to try to put some flesh on those bones and see how realistic those goals are. But I think we should all be looking for that to move forward as we go along. You'll see, though, that report is in your materials as well. There's a Giving Tuesday event that came right after Cyber Monday and Black Friday, and happily that raised about $10,000, and there was some leadership from the board on that. Appreciate everybody chipping in, and Chairman Lenahan kind of starting that. There will be, or maybe it occurred, I may have missed, and it's right around now, the naming of the City Campus Atrium event.
It's coming in the spring.
Spring, okay. That's coming up, and we'll have more to come on that, but that's going to be a good naming rights situation where we will achieve some revenue. In your packet and later for discussion during the meeting and for approval, there will be a third amendment to the AT&T cell tower lease at South Campus. That basically extends at the moment through September 1st, 2021. There's a 5-year extension to it and then 2 automatic 5-year extensions under the renewal terms. So what we're really approving today is a 15-year extension of that after September 1st, 2021. I didn't find anything out of line with the contract. We did talk about how the rate is set and the matter of negotiation between the college and the provider. They take care of all maintenance. We get use of it. It's been there for many years. It's a revenue source. The amount of revenue is quoted in your packet. It's pretty substantial. It's over $200,000, if I recall, maybe more than that. So that's going to be coming up. I don't think we're voting on this at this moment, but it will come up later in the discussion. Various financial reports. And I mentioned private use issues with that to the committee, and the college officials are aware of that. Various financial reports were given. Kenny Howard took the lead on that. You'll see your suppliers, your facility rentals. One interesting thing going on with facility rentals is that we've got the turf installed from Ralph Wilson Stadium, and groups are now using that, renting that, so they can practice on their artificial turf, and that looks like a intriguing and relatively good source of new revenue. That's starting to ramp up.
I have a question about the
Yeah.
facility rentals. I thought we were going to include the forms for any that were waived in this packet.
Yes, we did talk about that.
And, so there are a lot of, waivers to particularly county programs, which I think should be subtracted from the county support so we get a real measure of what the county support is.
I see. It was interesting. I've seen those waivers, but is that when I get the budget?
Yeah, we don't get it.
Okay. I mean, I have looked at those, and there are decisions made, and basically to the extent it's a community or governmental group, a
Understood.
waiver is more likely. Private use, league, and so forth, not so likely. But if it's not in front of us, I think it can easily be made so, and should.
Yeah.
And interesting idea about, that's
So we get
something
a
we're giving the
correlation.
county.
Right.
So, but those, every waiver, every dollar coming in is reported on.
Thank you.
Facilities capital projects, some discussion just about the general need for work here at the college, and that's a much broader discussion than what we can do within an individual report. Budget versus actual. Obviously a subject of constant review, discussion, and analysis by college officials, trustees, everyone involved. At this particular meeting on January 9th, we did receive an update through December, and basically what is going on, as I have interpreted it and understood it, is we're down on revenue through December for this year about 1.5%, with 1.4% to the good on the expense side, and we are basically trying to hold the line on expenses based on what we see on the revenue side. Everyone at the college is aware that we are facing demographic challenges in the form of fewer high school students graduating. We have a very strong economy right now that is not having people come back to re-credential themselves. These are facts that we're just faced with. And enrollment is declining, and we better, obviously all understand and internalize that. I believe we have. But exactly how we're responding to it, it's almost occurring on a rolling basis because, for example, we're budgeting only half of certain categories in this year because we do know that there's going to be enrollment news in January that wasn't available to us when we met, and we'll hear more about that, I'm sure. But we have to remain as light on our feet as we can and as able to react to these demographic changes as we can. I would say my overall impression right now is enrollment is down, revenue is down, but expenses are being managed in such a way that we're able to fit without an undue hit to the existing savings account, shall we say. There's about a 0.1% hit to that through December, .1, not 1. So it's being tapped very slightly, but the trends are not great. So the number one focus for everyone at the college and the board is to focus on this, understand this, and realize the environment that we're working in, and we have to respond not just quarterly or annually, but almost monthly to what is going on. So that's what I'll say about that, knowing that there will be more discussion at the meeting about that.
Right.
But that's our number one thing, obviously, we have to focus on. As for a couple of other quick items, the number one Oak Street lease and lease arrangement that are people were aware of through being mentioned at 1 or 2 board meetings is apparently, Penny, correct me if there's any change to this, but it's not proceeding.
No, it's not proceeding.
Can you give 30 seconds or so on why it's not proceeding? Just so we know.
Yes, so we, once we got a understanding of kind of what the needs were, what the costs were, and started working with the county attorney and the attorneys for the public school system and then also for the vendor, what we began to realize is that even though we were that at the larger scale at the state level, we would have been okay to proceed forward with this lease because the county only allows 5-year leases right now. The work to take it to a 15-year lease, which is what they were wanting, was going to be kind of overwhelming to do. So what we're doing right now is we've stepped back. BPS has gone out to with an RFP for a public bid, and they're going to go through this process kind of on their own to figure out how this works for them, because we weren't able to do what we were thinking we might be able to do on our side in support of that.
Okay, so that's off the agenda going forward. I think we were trying to be helpful, it didn't work out.
I do want to make clear that the program itself is continuing. We're continuing to have early middle college and can support that program. We just aren't going to be co-sharers of the space.
Okay, thank you, Penny. There's a number of materials from SUNY in the package, and it's good reading for those who care about the college, and Carrie, for you being relatively new, as well as myself, to the group. There's some excellent material in what I call the whereas clauses to all those SUNY resolutions. They seem repetitive, but if you read them, they actually tell quite a story about exactly how SUNY works, how the community college fits into the SUNY system, how the capital spending is handled as between the local sponsor and the state. A lot of good stuff that with a quick read you can gain a good understanding of the environment that we're working in. Most of us are aware of it, but to have it all captured, I would recommend not just flipping past the SUNY resolutions, but actually reading those whereas clauses. Our next meeting will be on March 12th. And of course, many of the subjects I've mentioned will be talked about at the board level here today. That's it for me.
Okay. So Jeff, you want to move the south cell tower?
Do you want to do that now?
Sure.
Yeah, okay. Having reviewed this with college officials and at the Budget and Finance Committee meeting, and having been the subject of some discussion here at the board last meeting and this meeting, I will move that we formally approve the amendment, the third amendment to the cell tower lease itself, extending it for a fixed 5 years plus 2 automatic 5-year renewals on the terms circulated.
Okay, there's been a motion made. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Okay, on the motion, any discussion?
Yes. Automatic renewals for 2 additional 5-year terms?
Yes, and it's automatic, which I would think of it as a 15-year contract right now. Penny, you want to comment on why it's structured that way?
It's, I think, just a traditional structure that we've done. If we hit the end of the 5 years and neither one of us is happy with the terms, which is typically what happens, because 5 years is a long time right now in this industry, then we can go back and renegotiate or decide that we want to proceed forward with it.
So the terms are looked at again and identified.
That's right, and we work hand in hand with the county on looking at the lease, the terms, all of those things, because they are actually the owners, and they just provide us the ability to take the revenue from those cell towers.
Did I misunderstand that, Penny? Because it looked to me like it was an automatic renewal. I'm not sure that we have the ability to go back and renegotiate.
I think we do. I can verify that with Leslie, with our attorney. I think that's the way, typically when we have an auto renewal, it's at that point as we go towards auto renewal, that we can take a look and decide whether we want to proceed forward or not. But if we decide we want to proceed forward, it just happens.
Yeah.
Correct.
All I would say is I had it read differently, but I may have, to me it looked like 5 years and then an automatic additional 5, and I didn't recall seeing unless somebody disagrees. So if that makes a difference in someone's vote, we should vote later in the meeting on this after I look at it.
Okay, do you want to hold that for?
Yeah.
Okay. We'll table that for now.
Okay.
And Jeff, I guess we'll receive and file the other items that you discussed.
Yep, all good stuff.
Thank you for the updates on all of those. Okay, we'll move on to policy and governance, Chair Kate Nesbill.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before you, we have three policies. The first is the admissions policy on page 169. This just establishes the policy providing how we go about admitting students who are seeking post-secondary education on either a part-time or full-time basis, matriculated, non-matriculated, or matriculated non-high school graduates who have a GED. Does anybody have questions about those? So then I'd like to move the admissions policy as proposed.
Okay, the motion made, do I have a second? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item is approved.
Thank you. We mistakenly included pages 173, 74, and 75 in your packet. It's not up for a vote, but I just point out that this was an earlier version of the dismissal policy that we're going to be looking at next. So please just disregard those pages 173 through 175. Next is a board policy for the disciplinary dismissal review. This just establishes clear expectations and a time frame for the application and notification process for applicants who apply to SUNY Erie who have been dismissed from a previous college, university, or from our institution itself. But since 1997, SUNY requires all students who are applying for admission to submit forms if they had been dismissed for disciplinary actions. Anybody have questions on this? Then I'll move to approve the disciplinary dismissal review policy as presented.
Is there a motion made, do I have a second?
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item is approved.
And lastly, we have the individualized instruction. It's in your packet on page 179. This just establishes criteria and approval for individualized instruction. This really comes into play when a student needs to graduate and there's not a course offering to allow him or her to fulfill the requirements. But institutionalized instruction is expensive, and so we're trying to put some fences around how we're going to approve this so that it's not an automatic thing. There's a form that needs to be completed by the student, the instructor, and the department chair, the dean of academics, and the dean of the course in the student program. So, and until that form is completed and filed, there is no individualized instruction, so we are really trying to get our hands around this process. Does anybody have questions about that?
Anything more that can be done on our part?
On the student part? I mean, what we're looking for is making sure that, you know, the student has investigated whether or not there is an alternative that's available to him or her, that they've spoken to their advisor, that they understand the expectations in individualized instruction are the same as any course, that seating in a section of the course is not constituting individualized instruction, and that, you know, it's not a guaranteed thing unless the proper procedure in this form is filled out properly. So we're just trying to get students to understand it's just not automatically available to them, and that they have a responsibility to seek out alternatives that exist now with, you know, other credit-bearing courses that will allow them to complete.
Are the advisors familiar with the necessary forms?
That is, we are going to disseminate the form here as an appendix to this policy that we will distribute to advisors so that they know, and the deans will have them too. So,
Only ask because I've got some feedback from a couple students. Because of the fact that they're advisors, they realize maybe course offering in the fall and not the spring, that the advisors, you know, push them into that course in the fall so they're able to graduate in time. So, I mean, the system's working to an extent, but I also want to make sure that we rely on the advisors to know the technical aspect of it, and the students may have to educate themselves, but going to the advisor and saying, hey, this is what I need to do in order to get everything done on time.
that makes perfect sense. Now, we'll make sure this policy, if it's approved, and the form accompanying it will be disseminated to all the appropriate people so that everybody understands what's necessary. Any other questions? Then I make a motion to approve the individualized instruction policy as presented.
Motion made, do we have a second?
Second.
It's been seconded. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Item is approved. Thanks, Kate.
Then we have the minutes to.
The other items 1 and 2 will be students. Okay, strategic planning and assessment, Todd, any update there?
No, our next meeting is not until March 11th, so we'll report it March 4th.
Okay. Okay, so we're now gonna go to, hold on a second. Okay, we're now going to success and diversity. Denise?
We don't have anything for approval, correct? Just to make sure. We don't have anything
Okay.
for approval, but I do know that, there are a few events that Tracy, you may wanna talk about coming up, out of your department.
I'll mention it.
Oh, okay, never mind, okay, sounds good. And I don't know if you wanna add anything else regarding the discussions that we had, anything else? No.
Okay.
Just so we just have our minutes from the December 13th.
So we'll just receive and file item 1 minutes.
Chairman Lenahan, we can take care of that lease thing.
Okay.
Okay.
Again, now we go back to that.
Yeah, and I misunderstood. Basically what this does is there's a 5-year term and then 2 automatic additional 5-year terms and measures from September of 2021 forward, so essentially to 2036. But the tenant, that's the college, does have the option of giving 60 days notice prior to the expiration of either of the terms if they do not wish to extend. So that gives an opportunity for renegotiation or even cancellation. So it is not as if we're in a 15-year situation. It's 5 plus 5 plus 5 with us having a 60-day out if we choose to use it.
So do you want to make a motion?
I will move that as so explained, we approve that contract.
Motion made, second?
Second.
Second. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay, item is approved. Okay, we will now move on to the report of the chair. I don't really have a whole lot since the last meeting, which was right before Christmas. Other than to say I was cheering on our staff for the registration and enrollment period. And we are now successfully into the next semester. But other than that, Christmas was great. Just got back from Florida, it was kind of nice. Other than that, I don't have a whole lot more to report. Okay, we'll move on to the ad hoc committee. Marketing, we're getting, Paul, we're getting ready to schedule another meeting.
Probably in the next few weeks.
Okay, good. We'll hear from that. Technology, Carrie?
Nothing to report at this point.
Okay.
Looking towards hopefully getting together with the appropriate people and getting the off the ground at this point.
Great. Talent management, Susan is not here. I don't think there's any others.
No, there's no report, we just asked for an executive session to discuss a couple of personnel matters.
Yes. Yeah, we will be taking that up. Absolutely. Okay, so we'll come back to that item. Okay. We'll move on to other reports. Report of the president.
Sure. Well, happy 2020, everyone.
Happy 2020.
And welcome back, especially to our Western New York snowboard trustees from their winter migrations. Things are looking up for the year. The days are getting longer. I don't know if Colleen has seen any robins out yet.
Cartoons.
But so summer is just around the corner. The Bills are looking great for next year, and the most important thing is the Patriots are not in.
Exactly. You can enjoy the Super Bowl.
Although I'd like to express condolences to all the Kobe Bryant fans across the globe.
Right.
Certainly a huge loss by any measure. I'd like to begin with a enrollment and budget update, beginning with wrapping up last year and the fiscal 2019 budget with our reconciliations finalizing now. It looks like with regards to actual revenue to budgeted revenue, we brought in 1.5% less than we had budgeted for, but our actual expenses were lower than budgeted by 1.41%. So the net result of actual revenue to actual expenses was minus 0.1% on a $110 million budget. So it doesn't get much closer than that, and all the credit goes to Penny Howard, who through her fastidious monthly reforecasting and active managing of our expenses to revenue generated, was able to come within 0.1%, which is roughly about $100,000.
So Dan, are we talking about the fall semester? We're talking about 18-19.
Yeah, fiscal year 18.
18-19.
Closing out 18 now.
Okay.
We're closing it out. But the reconciliations have finally come in. because there's a bit of a lag, obviously. And I don't think we presented this at any board meeting
Okay.
prior.
What I referred to
Right.
from the meeting settings.
No, I
So we've come within $100,000 on a $110 million budget. So we all understood it's a priority to have a balanced budget for the year, and so we are extremely proud to have achieved that for 2018, 2019. So let's give Penny a round of applause for being able to maintain a balanced budget for fiscal year 2019. For the spring 2020 semester, the advanced studies numbers will finalize around mid-March. We are expecting to be down approximately 389 heads to budget as of this morning. This will create an approximate budget shortfall year-to-date of about $750,000, which we believe is manageable, and we will do the same as we did last year. But I'd like to ask Penny to talk about some of the specific strategies we're employing to manage our revenue gap again.
Dan, what is the FTE number again?
The what?
It's heads.
389.
389.
Okay.
Heads are different than FTE though, but.
Right, so that's what you're asking.
Yes, yes. So as Dan said, we are about $750,000 short of our revenue budget. There's a projected shortfall at the moment, year-to-date, fall, winter, and where we are so far in spring. We are currently managing that revenue gap with an offsetting year-to-date right now for this fiscal year. Right now, we've got about $900,000 in expense savings to budget. And so that fluctuates obviously week to week, but right now we're balanced to the revenue. So again, we're falling short of our budget projections, and managing within the revenue that we're generating is how we're taking care of that. Not a place we want to continue to be at. We've got to have and do some work as we go into 2021 on how we manage the continuing enrollment decline and moving forward. So, but we are managing that. Primarily where we have generated some of this is in the work that the provost and I have done in trying to manage additional duty pay, trying to manage the adjunct hires by controlling how many courses that we're offering and then having to drop in the adjunct period. So that's created a few $100,000 in savings. And then we also were able to work with the county, and we have pre-2003 retiree health care that we pay to the county annually for our employees that they are managing those payments for back when we were on their system. So we worked with them because the volume was never dropping. We were constantly paying 16% every year. And after 20 years, I'm pretty sure we don't have as many people on that payroll or on that list. So we worked with them and we got that number down from 16% to 9% of that list. And we're very comfortable with that because we were able to see that those employees were ours. So that's another $300,000 to $500,000 in savings that we've been able to generate. So we will, per the county and their budget process, we will also be receiving an additional $250,000 in MOE this year in our April payment. So that's very appreciated. And then as we look forward, for summer, we've got budgeted about $3 million in tuition in the budget for enrollment. And I'm going to pass off to Paula now, let her talk a little bit about some of the kind of strategies that we're doing to try and bump the marketing piece up so that we might be able to get some more students in here for the summer and generate a little more revenue.
Good morning. So traditionally for Summer Push, we actually usually do a targeted push starting in early May. I'm actually going to get a little bit more aggressive this year with that strategy and start our targeting a little bit into April. Specifically targeting students who are in four-year privates who are home on Easter break. So we're talking about students from Western New York who may be going elsewhere outside of the region to four-year privates. Obviously Excelsior Scholarship has dipped into the pool of students from four-year public institutions that would come here for the summer because they're not necessarily seeing the cost savings by coming to us, but those private students are still seeing a significant cost savings for us. So we actually do have the summer schedule at this point, so I'm working on a strategy right now and building out those specific enrollment target areas, but we'll be seeing quite a bit of push in April, again, targeted strictly at those students who are home on their break. To try and get them to enroll earlier than they might if they were coming home in May, because it's a little late for us by then. But the hope here is that, we've been pretty aggressive in our targeting for the last 2 years when it comes to summer enrollment, to make sure that we hit the revenue numbers that we've been budgeted for, and have definitely hit those numbers in the last 2 years. But I want to see if we can push that envelope and get it up a little bit higher this year.
Great, thanks.
Just a question. So we're looking at students who are away from school but may need to take some classes over the summer?
Yeah, so what'll happen is, if either they're trying to get ahead on their education because of what we offer, or they're struggling with their grades at their current school, so by coming and taking a class at home, it helps to bring their GPA up, especially if it's a school we have a transfer agreement with. And, privates, we have a significant number, especially the privates that we're looking at specifically, so I've been going through our articulation agreements in particular. But that's part of the reason that I look in particular at the classes that we're offering. So when I'm targeting students from those 4-year privates, what I'm looking at specifically are those classes that would fulfill general education requirements for them in many situations, because we do offer a significant number of those courses in the summer. So that's the targets that I build out specifically for that population in particular.
Okay, so the reason that this resonates with me, of course, is because of my son, who is in Maryland at school right now, thinking of taking summer courses, either there or here. It's not a private school though, he's at a HBCU. However, he has taken classes here during high school. And so I'm wondering if it would be worth reaching out to that population as well. So the students who probably took advanced studies courses in high school who are now gone, but will be coming back over the summer and.
So when I say that I'm in particular, I'm looking at private schools, what we're doing is looking at when they're home on break. That does not mean it's exclusive to that population.
Okay.
So I'm not targeting necessarily an individual as much as populations of Western New York students who are living outside of the region, but they happen to be here back around Easter time.
Okay.
What they're going to start seeing are some specifically targeted ads popping up on their social media, popping up on their digital search. And those are some pretty aggressive strategies that we don't necessarily do all the time with that population, those outside of the region populations at Easter time. But because I want to try and push the envelope a little bit higher this year, we're starting a little bit earlier. I'm deploying that strategy for a 3-week window around Easter, the week before, the week of, the week after. So to try and capture some of those students who are back in the region, because it's based off of a zip code demographic, it's based off of an age demographic, and it's that college age student. So if your son happens to be in any of the areas that, and he probably will, while he's home visiting, in any of those areas that we're targeting, he's likely going to see an ad from us as well. So it's not about, and I'll be curious if he does actually see an ad. And you and I will be following up on that. That'll be a great test on that one.
Okay, okay, that's great. I just needed a little clarification on that. And have there been, well, I know you look at the reports of the effectiveness of our ad campaigns and what have you.
Absolutely.
Have those reports come through the marketing committee?
We do talk about data in the marketing committee. As a matter of fact, what we'll be doing is I'm pulling all of the data together now, because when we're running campaigns, I actually review those almost daily to see if I need to make any adjustments on anything. But part of what I've talked about in the past is strategically, we're moving past just doing the push period. So we obviously for December and January, we were doing a spring push. But I have campaigns running during the month of February to drive the inquiry pool for working adults on programs in particular that the deans have identified as programs that are flexible for working adults. So credit for prior learning, online classes, as well as night or weekend classes where they can primarily get a degree in those areas. So part of what we talk about in that working group is, here are some of the campaigns that are going to be upcoming. I'll review data from some of the previous campaigns that we did and why we've made the changes that we've made. And I'm happy to do any presentation to the board at some point in information, in a working session for you to walk you through some of the data that we look at and what that does for us.
Maybe February, the info meeting, that might be
Yeah.
good.
Happy to talk about it. I can maybe provide into some of the data and what that does for us and how it drives the next set of decisions that we make. But in particular, what I'm doing for the month of February, I'll be happy to talk to you about why we've chosen to do what we're doing for that. First half of March will be about driving inquiries into program-specific areas as well. And then the second half of March will be pushing for open house, which is in early April. But then the rest of April will be focused on driving program inquiries or moving students through. So it's not just about driving into that first stage of the funnel, but then I take a look at the funnel report with Phil Struble in admissions, and we'll look at students who've already entered the funnel, who've done an inquiry, who've started an application, and now we start retargeting them for prompting them to get to the next stages of the funnel.
I think that's what really needs to be included in the report that you give, and with you too, Steve. So it's got to be your efforts and then the conversion to enrollment. Like, how does that work?
And that actually is one of the things we're going to talk about at the marketing working group. There's I'm pulling together a smaller committee of the academic deans, myself and Phil, that is going to be meeting on a monthly basis to really start focusing on the actual funnel itself, looking at that funnel on a monthly basis to see who's in the pool based on program areas, what we need to do in each area of the funnel, and then engaging the deans and working with the faculty as well as our counseling units to really drive stage 4 of the funnel and move that conversion rate up, because the numbers that we're seeing in the front of the funnel, getting them into the pool, have been consistently rising. And applications and acceptances have been staying at consistent levels, so those numbers are going up as well. So we're converting all of those areas at the same percentages, but because we have higher numbers in there, that means those numbers are going up. But if we're not converting in the 4th stage of the funnel, then we're losing there. So what we want to do is really tackle stage 4 right now as a working group to be able to report back to the full marketing group, but also to the board on a regular basis to what efforts we're doing in that stage 4 of the funnel to move students toward that enrollment conversion.
Right. And identifying those barriers
Absolutely
is really the key.
And there's always going to be, we've talked about this, there's always going to be a population, because our pool is so wide as far as the inquiries go, there's always going to be a population of students who apply multiple places and they're not going to convert and necessarily come here. But setting those concrete goals for how many students we want to get converted on a percentage basis every year, and really pushing ourselves toward those goals. That's what our goal is to do this semester, and really building out into helping Penny build out budgets based off of those goals that we're looking at as well.
And I would just add that to support those things on the Workday front, one of the things that we're doing right now is developing our new onboarding strategy and our onboarding process through Workday. So very much like an employee has an inbox here of to-do items, whether it's doing a time card, approving time cards, and that sort of thing, we're also developing a list of important pre-enrollment milestones that students need to complete so that we can present them to them in a logical, systematic fashion and get them in a system where we can communicate these to them. There are things that are there, they're always going to be there, obvious to them every time that they log into the system. So that's a nice advantage to Workday, something that we haven't had the ability to really do electronically. We could always present students a list, but we could never present them an opportunity to see where they were in that list, and that's what we're moving to now with Workday.
A couple of comments in response to some of this. There were some bright spots that were touched on at convocation, and maybe in your report, Dan, or Doug, later in the meeting, and so great. But I think we should talk a little bit about some of the uptick on the retention side that was very good to talk about. It was a great convocation. And on that general point, I think it would be helpful for the board, all of us, to gain as great an understanding as we can of when we're short on headcount, how do we break it down as between lacking new people coming to us, making it through that funnel, and how much do we attribute to those who have been here leaving in a disproportionate fashion? I realize that people leave, and sometimes for good reasons, go on to four-year colleges or whatever, but is there a difference here that makes this current set of numbers something that we need to understand better? In terms of, and I would be, I think, frankly, more concerned if we had a difficult problem on the retention side, because they've tried us and not liked us.
Right.
If they you know, we can do a lot of things to get people into the funnel and fix phase 4, and that's good. A sense of where the shortage in headcount is coming from, that's between retention and intake, would be helpful.
So to address that, you know, that's actually a conversation, Doug Penny, the president and I met yesterday afternoon for a few hours to talk about where the numbers are, but you know, Doug and Penny and I were meeting with Fabio and Steve a few weeks ago too, to do a deeper dive into numbers, and we're really looking at breaking everything down by pockets of students as well. So we're looking at everything in that enrollment funnel. So our enrollment funnels, or our student populations are broken down by first-time students, by returning students, so stop-out students who've been back, by continuing students, which is our current student population, as well as transfer students coming in addition to advanced studies and pathway students who are not at the full tuition level. So when we look at these numbers, part of what we're talking about building out, especially moving forward with budget, is building out targets for each of those areas. And some of the data that I've already pulled is looking at a 5-year history of what percentage of our student population for fall and spring each of those pockets of students makes up. Because as we look at dwindling populations, especially at the high school level, what are we going to be able to build out as a sustainable model in the long term? And that's that's part of the deeper discussion we need to have about when we're building out budget, that there needs to be a significant conversation about what is a sustainable model and building a better projection model based off of percentage of students that should be in each of those pockets. So we are focusing our efforts in the correct areas. Especially noting the retention and the persistence numbers, and I know Doug's going to talk a little bit about this as well. But keeping in mind that we're always trying to rapidly improve where we're going, and having a plan to improve each of those areas is where this team's focus is right now at the higher level.
Thank you.
Can I say one other clarification about the 389 number? Students were down in this semester. Is that from last spring, or is that
That's from
budget for
budget.
this year?
That's from budget.
So budget for this year?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Okay, that's good.
And what's the percentage, how does that translate percentage-wise? Do you have a sense?
Asking an accountant to do math in her head, probably not gonna work. I hold on, we can remember.
Well,
Pardon?
We got it, we can get it.
we'll get back to this meeting.
We'll get some more, we'll be talking some more about this.
So thanks, Penny and Paula. As Paula mentioned, we all got together yesterday, and we will be getting together on a weekly basis just to be able to manage expenses to revenue. And some of the changes we've made will have direct positive impact on our students. And I want to turn it over to Doug to maybe highlight some of those benefits.
Yeah, and Jeff, I've talked some of this at retention or at convocation, and so it's great to be able to repeat myself and add on to some of those things. Because some of the numbers that we look at are retention, which is fall to fall, and persistence, which is fall to spring. So we identified those things. And so Penny talked about all of these numbers as they relate to dollars and budget. And I'd like to talk about these numbers and the strategies behind them in terms of what our students experience and how the work that supports budget actually also is exactly the same work that supports students. So some of the things that happened, as you may have heard, when we came fall to fall, and we get that number about October, the retention of fall 18 students was up. And that's important to note because after 7 years of completely level, not changing, 7 years, we were at about 54.3% retention fall to fall. We were up 1.6% this fall. So after completely level, we had over 1% bump in retention is significant because you add strategies year after year, and that moves the dial significantly. When you get, in my previous campus, we moved the dial 9 percentage points in 3 years. So you move 1 or 2% each year, and that's significant. And some of the things that we believe moved that is, of course, the communication and enrollment group that we had meeting, which was constantly identifying students and nudging them with email, text, call, and follow-up regarding you are a student who, but isn't. In other words, you applied, but you started an application but didn't finish it. Please do. you were accepted, but you didn't take your placement test. You took your placement test, but you didn't register for courses. You did not, all of that, but you did not apply for financial aid grant. You did all of that, but you did not pay your remaining bill. And so all of those subgroups would get often a text that said, please go to your email and read it. So you get the longer message. That push, and what I left off at convocation, may I call up, was to speak to the work of changing both our policy, but also our practice around how we support students at risk, students on probation. And so our counselors have worked diligently to decrease the number of probation students who end up being academically dismissed after the next semester, from close to 1,000 students in a year to less than 100. That's huge work to take a student who's really struggling academically and turn them into a successful student. And those two strategies are probably the major things that I can put my finger on that we did structurally differently last year. Then also, in order to move our persistence number up from fall to spring, we did a few things. We opened the registration for courses 2 weeks early. We didn't wait for the printed version to turn on the ability to register online. That meant that on December 20th, we had more students who left with their schedule done than we did last year. That was sort of the metric I was looking at, because if you've got it done, you're less likely to drift away. Also, we made sure that every student matriculated at our college has a faculty advisor, a faculty in the department serving their major that they could go to get advisement regarding their coursework. That was true through our campus, but it wasn't universal. And we did that, and we pushed them, please go see your advisor if you need advisement. So we pushed them to faculty advisors. And we also attempted to change. We have a practice of, on Thursday before the semester begins, we have a day called Run Cancel, where classes that are low enrolled are canceled, even if there are students in them. And that can really disrupt a student's experience, because it's Thursday, classes are starting on Tuesday, and your schedule has to change. So we wanted to minimize that. So what we did in the fall is we created a more conservative schedule and watched the enrollments in case we needed to add along the way. And we did that, and what that meant was we put fewer sections on. And the interesting thing is, over that time, from October, November, when the schedule was built, to Run Cancel, we needed to add 14 sections. We have 2,500 sections in a semester. And by watching what was filling up, we only needed to add 14. So the deans, by estimating about 120% of last spring's enrollment, got very close to what we needed. But that also meant we served the students' needs, but we didn't overshoot in instructional cost. So serving both ends of making sure the student experience is strong, but also making sure that this college is fiscally sustainable. So in all those things, I'm hoping we're serving the students well. And my metric, being a numbers guy, in terms of the students' success, can I? Yep. Persistence from fall to spring is up. And I just got that number yesterday, similar to our retention number, slightly over 1%. And that means that with all of these changes, we had a higher percent of our students return who were already enrolled into the spring, which is an early indicator of the possibility that they might graduate eventually.
That's good news. I just had a very quick question before you get too far from that. 1,000 students on probation down to 100 point that you made?
Not on probation, but successfully able to return the next semester without being dismissed.
Okay. Just making sure I understand that. An outside observer may say, well, that's easy to do if you just reduce the standards. Can you talk about whether that happened? And
because we're not talking
to account for it.
Reducing the standards, we didn't change our threshold for dismissal. And we certainly didn't change the faculty's grading expectation. It's really about the expectations of support and what guiding students to do the behaviors that will guide them to success. About attendance, about studying, all of those skills.
Trying to anticipate a response to what you said without characterizing it as that.
Yeah, it's really success. You know.
Good.
Thanks, Ed. Yeah, and I just want to highlight Doug's excellent work in being the nudge in chief to ensure that students have their business affairs in order before, so that they can register on time. Again, a 1.6% bump in retention, first time in 7 years, and then what he's just announced, a semester persistence increase. So we're moving in the right direction. And we'll give the final persistence numbers at a future board meeting. But let's give Doug a hand for being such a good nudge. Chairman Lanahan, you asked for what the actual numbers, percentage was for those numbers. So the reason why we gave you head count this time was the last time we gave you a percentage, and then Trustee Wilson asked for us to give him head count. I don't know what we recall that conversation. So, but the 389 students equates to 3.9%. So the head count goal was 9,969. So if you divide 389 by 9,969, you get 3.9%. Okay, so from moving on, unless there's more questions about that.
Well, I'm sure we'll be talking about this more.
Employee, let me see. Oh, enrollment management would like to announce that spring career and internship fairs are scheduled for March 31st through April 2nd. We are coordinating the career fairs and transfer fairs to run concurrently in order to make it more convenient for our students to attend both events. As well, our testing services generated over $15,000 in non-tuition revenue from September through December of 19. And this area will also provide talent management testing for more than 1,800 candidates of the New York State court system between April and June this year. So congratulations to all our staff in testing services. From ITS, our Workday Discovery implementation continues smoothly for records and academic advising. Recent discussions have focused on transfer credit articulation, student grading configuration, integration of colleague student records, as well as future options for transcripts. So thanks again for Mina for her oversight here, as well as all the staff that are doing double duty, running both systems simultaneously during the Workday implementation. From Equity and Diversity, author and racial justice educator Debbie Irving visited SUNY Erie last week to share her story of personal awakening as it relates to racial equity. More than 150 people attended Wednesday's reception and keynote here at City, with a large contingent of those attendees coming from the local community. In addition to a second keynote at North Campus the next day, Ms. Irving also led 2 breakout sessions with members of my cabinet and myself, as well as a group consisting of directors, deans, and other staff. And I personally appreciated her personalized, non-threatening approach and was encouraged what she said about our institutional trajectory with regards to racial equity and inclusion. So we hope to have her back at some time in the future. And on Friday, February 28th, this is what Trustee Wilson was hoping to hear, that SUNY Erie will host a day-long conference on the retention and success of students of color in higher ed. The keynote speaker is national columnist, author, and journalist Roland Martin. The committee, led by the Office of Equity and Diversity and City Campus Dean Katrina Hill-Cheatham, has received generous sponsorship thus far, but is still accepting sponsorships in addition to proposals for breakout sessions. So I believe you have already received an invitation for this, but you will get a reminder in your email shortly. And this is another foray for us into opportunities for non-tuition revenue and establishing SUNY Erie as a center for conversations on diversity, equity, and inclusion. So special thanks to Tracy Archie and Tracy Cleveland for their initiative here. From the foundation, the long-awaited Tesla solar installation is finally reaching its conclusion as the project has finally cleared the necessary regulatory obstacles. The solar panel will be installed on top of the STEM building at North over the Easter recess this year. And Tesla is donating the solar array in addition to the installation costs. So this project is expected to provide some energy cost relief, as well as contribute to the Living Learning Laboratory at North Campus. So special thanks to Mike Pikevich for his long stewardship of this project. That's it from the president.
Okay, thanks, Dan. The student trustee report, Albert.
Morning, everyone.
Morning.
Hope everyone had a good holiday season and a happy new year. Report's not going to be as long as I normally have it, but first I want to start off by thanking Sue Holdaway and ASC for their continued support for the extended cafeteria hours and taking a step forward in solving some vending issues I've brought up in the past. It's been a quick and decisive action. I really appreciate it. Also, I thank the professors at SUNY Erie for going with alternate educational resources that don't necessarily cost students as much. Like I've said before, the eye hasn't changed in thousands of years. Why aren't we buying the newest book? So they're making it seems like they're making a more of an effort to go with things that cost less. Students really appreciate that. Also, the use of advisors. I've gotten some positive feedback as well from students regarding meeting with their advisors and getting more of a plan on how to graduate. That's a good thing. Speaking of a personal experience at the Natural Sciences Department, Professor Welkins, he is a workhorse when it comes to this kind of thing. I remember having a meeting with him, but I was the first of 6 students waiting. So students are going to their advisors and getting counseling. And last thing for good news is the college reaching out and contacting students regarding what they need. Getting the occasional email or text message regarding enrollment, tuition issues, that kind of thing is not bad. I've only received, I see one guy complained about it, saying, "I registered. Why am I getting a text message?" I asked him, "You're really concerned about getting 1 or 2 text messages?" Is it really that big of a deal? I'll call that a first world problem. But other than that, feedback has been good. A couple issues though. I feel like a broken record here, but they're all centered around. After speaking to students at faculty, a lot of the main issues are centered around general cleanliness. I've gotten a lot of, mainly around North Campus. I've walked through the high traffic areas such as the bookstore, financial aid office, student lounge, that kind of thing. And even though, to be fair, there has been some progress. For example, at North Campus, there used to be this gaping hole in the ceiling above the cash register. That's gone. They replaced the tiles. But if you go to financial aid office, because I'm not sure about the percentage of people that go through financial aid, but it has to be high, 80, 90%. There's cobwebs hanging, carpet, obviously wear patterns of the carpet from people walking in and out, that kind of thing. The student lounge, it just seems there are panels missing, carpet's dirty, that kind of thing, and people notice that. I know that's not. I know, and the students know it's not practical to catch everything at every day at every single time. We don't have the staff for that to look at everything every day, right?
Trustee too, I would encourage you to bring any cleanliness or facilities issues directly to Tracy Gass.
I've worked with Tracy Gass the last couple of months, and there is progress, but with wear and tear, one thing may be fixed, another thing, something else happens. But knowing that you can't be all places at all times, maybe if there was a feedback mechanism for students to report deficiency. I'm not sure if there could be an app or a comment box. Or something students can use to report something. Because students' eyes are everywhere. And they'll get on their phones in a second and complain about something, right? But if they had a mechanism to fix it, because over the last few months we've, with the vending machine issue with ASC, if they had a problem, they didn't know where to go to fix it. And ASC's remedied that by putting a number on the vending machine so they can call. Right. If there's a overflowing toilet, if there's a not working handicap door, if there's a way they can report it.
That's a good idea. I'll talk to Tracy about some way that we can provide students with feedback immediately on any issues they find.
I don't know if this is possible, but with this text service that we have, if you can send texts, can they?
Yeah, you absolutely can.
So perhaps there can be a dedicated maintenance text number.
That is probably very feasible. Yeah, that's a good idea.
It strikes me as something that's easy to do and that would affect every student in a positive way, and at very little cost, if any. So that should be done.
So we actually have, in some of the restrooms, I think we've started to put things around for them to have numbers to call to be able to do that. But what we can do is work with marketing, ensure that we do a better job blanketing the campuses, so they know how to get in touch and put in or order if they see an issue like that. So we'll make sure we take care of that.
Because, you know, it's not just, you know, things around campus. I mean, if you go to a STEM building and you sit down in a classroom, the STEM building is the newest building, but the projectors have the whole change the filter message, and say if you have a projection, box takes up a third of the screen saying change the filter, but it happens every day. You know, and I remember seeing that in class one day, and I can't remember if it was a student or a professor said, you know, what do you expect? It's SUNY Erie. You know, I don't want that mentality. I want people to think that this is acceptable here. All right, that's all I have, really. Any questions from anyone else? No?
Thanks, Albert. Okay, Colleen Senate, Colleen, come in, sir. Colleen.
Hi, good morning. Welcome back to January spring semester where I've got 4 classes in so far, and something that Doug and I have always talked about, we never really feel like we're in the swing of things until we hit about week 4. We get past that 3rd week roster, and then it starts to become a little bit more normal. So it's always crazy this time of year. But we haven't met since December. Our next Senate meeting is February 11th. But at our last December meeting, just to touch on some of the points that were brought up, we encouraged our faculty to go back to their classes and start quizzing our students. Like, hey, are you registered? Who's registered? Raise your hand. You know, why aren't you registered? Oh, okay, you're graduating. Did you fill out your application? Do you know who your advisor is? No, I don't. You know, do you want to work with me? I can help you. So a lot of us did that, and I know particularly my classes, by the end of the semester, all of my students were either graduating or registered for the spring. And with the advisement new model, I'm one of the faculty members that now have students assigned to me. I have 25, and with the help of my secretary, we went through, and 22 of my 25 students, either they worked with me or they worked on their own or whatever, but 22 out of 25 were registered for this semester. And I also worked with at least 8 other students with my classes, getting them registered. And I know I'm not the only one with that, so we've done a big push to make sure that we've embraced this new advisement model. It's been a learning curve for sure, because I've only done it on the side here and there. So, but it's been really good. And with the individual instruction, I was a part of that, and the College Senate also worked on the form. And now that things are getting approved, we're going to disseminate it through the Senate in February, and then it'll be getting out to advisors after that. We'll have it on the Senate page, but we'll also be pushing that out to everybody so that everyone's aware for moving on into future semesters. Moving forward, we are going to be forming a task force. Hopefully, we're going to be we have a resolution for a task force to adapt our online Bill of Rights to student expectations. So we are going to hopefully form a task force of the Senate to work on this. But with, I'm sure Kate, you'll recall, with the online Bill of Rights, it went back and forth several times because there is an implication with labor. So even though the Senate does work on an academic component, labor has to be brought in. So we're going to be working with Andy Sacco and FMBCC to adapt this online model for all students and all student expectations. And we're hoping to get it done, you know, as quickly as possible, but it did take 3 semesters for the online Bill of Rights. So hopefully I'll have more updates for you on that as we proceed.
But the hard work stuff now.
Yes, that was difficult. So I'm hoping But, you
Year or
know,
two with policy committee.
I'm hoping it'll be smooth, but you never know. Every time I think something's gonna be smooth at the Senate and it's gonna be easy peasy, it's like a 45-minute thing that I didn't expect, so. Excuse me. So that's something we're gonna be coming forward. And then another thing we're going to be addressing is the state budget. So I don't know if everyone is aware that the governor came out with his new budget for the state. So the floor funding, just the gist of it, it's a little bit more involved, but the floor funding was not included, and there's no increase in FTE dollars. So,
Thus far.
what's that?
Thus far.
Thus far. So if this is enacted, so it's not enacted yet, then 28 of the community colleges would receive less state funding than this year.
Colleen, by the floor funding, you're talking about the 98%
Yes.
guarantee?
Yes, 98% guarantee.
This usually involves a process of negotiation, so this is just the starting point.
This is right, the
Just like with
preliminary.
secondary schools, I work with,
Right.
shot across the bow.
The state ops fared much better with this budget. Child care funding was cut by more than half, and all community college capital funding, except for one college, was in his budget. So to address this, Faculty Council of Community Colleges, as well as FFECC representatives, are going to legislators either in Albany or hosting them on campuses or at different events to lobby for more money for the community colleges. So I know FFECC is going next week, Monday, Tuesday to Albany, and they're bringing students with them to lobby our legislatures that are local. Faculty Council of Community Colleges has a group going in February and March with students as well. SUNY's going to be coming out with a fact sheet that's going to be disseminated to all faculty, staff, and staff administration, president's cabinet, with bullet points for what we need to talk about to our state legislatures to make sure that we get the funding that we need.
Could you share that list of bullet points with us?
Yes. I just got an email today. It hasn't come out yet, but it's going to be coming. So right now, currently, the Faculty Council of Community Colleges has 3 resolutions that they're hoping for us to endorse so that we can send it to the state with things that are very important to us as a whole in the community colleges for our budget. So one of our resolutions is supporting child care funding. Because as we know, a lot of our students are working parents. And even though, we make money off of the child care, but our students in particular, they need this, right? Because not everybody can pay for the child care. So we need this funding. We're also supporting a resolution for a new funding model, which is 100% of the previous year's funding, and which is, again, as Jeff mentioned, 98%. So those are the 2 things that we're going to be discussing in Senate. We're hoping to endorse those so we can add SUNY Erie to the list of community colleges supporting these when we go to the state legislatures. We also have a 3rd resolution that FCCC is hoping for us to endorse, and it doesn't deal with the budget, but it's still very important for our students, and it's a resolution supporting gender inclusivity. So we're asking campuses to change all student gender selection documentation to become more inclusive and avoid only binary selections. So that's the other resolution that we're going to be looking to hopefully endorse at the February meeting. The flu went through my house last week, so I'm like,
oh, no.
Yeah, it's 4 boys, it was really fun. I know, I'm like, Maureen saved me a seat. We're also going to be looking at Chancellor's Awards for faculty and students, and I'm meeting with Tracy next week so we can get that ball rolling because the due date is at the end of February. And that is, that's all I got for right now.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. Yes.
Go ahead. Let's do it. Okay. I'm going to frame this question for Carrie's benefit, but it's really for mine.
Okay.
I feel like in my first year on board, I
acronyms.
feel a little bit too far removed from the Senate in terms of exactly who you are and what you do.
Okay.
So if you could take 30 seconds, not a long time, to
Sure.
take what exactly, who comprises, how often do you meet, And are trustees welcome to come? And if so, if they are welcome to come, because everything you've said has been very interesting here, and has been in your past reports too.
Thank you.
I would propose, if it hasn't been done, Kelly, if you could individually invite us to, I may have gotten a list of when the Senate meets and not fully internalized it, but an Outlook invitation, I would at least try to make an effort to try to come to some of these meetings. So with that as prelude, can you?
Yeah, no, absolutely. So the College Senate is relatively new to Erie Community Colleges. We were one of the last community colleges to adopt a faculty senate. We had actually worked through the contract to get it done at the time. So it's comprised of faculty, staff, and senior executive members. So really just everybody in the college. In the last couple of years, we included students. So now we have the presidents of the 3 campuses that now also are voting members of the College Senate. And it's something new that we started under my term. And I'm actually elected. So I was a senator and was elected through that process to the Senate, but then I ran for my position.
So there are Senate, not every faculty member is in the Senate. There's an elected process that goes on.
Yes, there's an election
How many
process.
people are in the Senate?
There is approximately 70. We actually just went through, and that's faculty and staff. We try to make sure the ratio of faculty is about 60%, and we just did a census, and we realized that we're actually under that right now, so we're going to be looking at that with our governance committee to make sure that we keep the ratio that's stated in our bylaws of faculty to staff administration is what it's supposed to be. But yeah, I ran 4 years ago. I ran 4 years ago. I did a single term, and then we changed it because we felt that if you only have one term, you get all the stuff done, and then someone else comes in. So then we changed it to a 2-year term. So I'm actually on my 3rd term. I have 1 more year after this. But it's an elected position, and then the vice chair and the secretary is also elected positions, and then we have a Senate Executive Committee, so it's myself, the chair, vice chair, the secretary, and then we have the Faculty Council of Community Colleges delegate, which is Michael Delaney. He's been there for like 400 years. And we have 2 senior executive staff members. We have Dr. Scheidt and Fabio Escobar, as well as a representative from AAECC, which is Paul Lamana, and then 2 other faculty members, and those are all elected as well. But the primary job of the College Senate is to review or produce academic policy or procedure, and that's our main process.
But you also have some degree of almost a lobbying effort to some extent by channeling your collective resources for the benefit of the college.
Yes, absolutely. Because our membership is all of the college, I work very closely with all of the unions, which AECC, FFECC, I'm going to mess up the other acronym that CSCA, AXMA, right? And FB, sorry. I know that's your crew. But I work closely with all of them, as well as the students and some of the people that work with the students in SGA, so that we are all collectively together on the same page and working as a united force and not separate wheelhouses.
Okay, well, if we could just all receive an invitation, that we'll make what we can. And
absolutely.
At least be
It's an
forward.
open meeting. Everyone is encouraged to attend, and we also stream it. And so if you can't make it, you can stream it, or you can even go to the SUNY Erie YouTube channel and watch them after the fact, because we keep them open forever. And my children watch it, and and it's always, I'm always making some crazy face, because you know how the videos, they just freeze wherever, and it's the most ridiculous faces ever. It's very entertaining. Yeah.
The next Senate meeting is February 11th.
February 11th. It's
Tuesday at
2:30, and it's at North Campus.
February 11th.
Yep, Tuesday the 11th.
Okay.
At
Calendar.
B207 at North.
But Kelly will send you all a reminder.
Great.
The meetings are very informative, Jeff.
Yeah, Chairman Lemon and I
Because
did
we're
work
going to
several.
come together,
Yeah.
and gets a chance to put input into campus policy and decision making, and Colin does a great job.
Todd?
Keeps everybody together. It's a big group to keep together.
It is, it's something new every meeting.
Thanks for that, Summer, appreciate it.
No problem.
Thanks, Colin.
Did you have a question?
I did, but it may be broader than the college setting. But I was sort of interested in the budget piece and in the lobbying work that the Senate and the various associations and unions might be participating in. And my thought was the need, or the effort to broaden the constituencies that are involved in advocating for community college. So we have all these advisory councils, for example, and business people who are connected to the college. And so this isn't really maybe a college senate question, but I'm interested in what kind of efforts the college is participating in to broaden the advocacy.
I can address that.
Okay.
So we've been in conversations with SUNY very, very closely over the past few weeks since the budget has come out. And we will be sending you points to talk to our local legislature, lawmakers. Mike Pikevich and I will be at the Buffalo Niagara Partnership Legislative Luncheon and helping, making sure that the business community will be on our side in terms of advocacy. Mike's been very busy at the Amherst Chamber, and they've recently passed, why don't you tell them about the policy that they
Yeah, they do a regional policy agenda every year, and we actually have the exact language that Colleen was referring to that the FFUCC supports in terms of the base funding aid for community college was included in their agenda. And if you look regionally at the business community, to Todd's point, we're leveraging those relationships. Those organizations were actively involved in to make sure our message gets out there. The partnership did have a general statement of SUNY support. They also have our colleagues in independent institutions on their board, and so I think they try to walk that line a little bit, but we certainly work those other angles, and it's a good point. And Andy and I have spent several years talking about how we coordinate activities. We've been successful in some years and other years, but the truth is that our message is the same. We're all speaking off the same song sheet.
Yeah. And the Erie County Legislature just approved the, I forget what we're calling it now, but the 98% floor. So resolution, that's it. So it's a full press right now.
Okay.
On all fronts.
Very good.
Combination of unions, business community, local legislature.
I was going to say, I'd like to add, if you have any personal relationships with state legislatures, it's always recommended to go right ahead and, if you see them out and about or you're out to lunch, go for it, advocate for us. And when we get that SUNY fact sheet, we will send it out, make sure everybody here gets it. And there are SUNY lobby days that are coming up. I'm working on getting those dates as well, where SUNY's going to be going specifically to Albany for the legislatures.
Does the college retain an actual lobbyist, or do we do lobbying at the level of the offices?
We send our students.
Yeah, that's more effective.
Oh, Andy, do you want to say something?
I just wanted to mention that with the New York State United Teachers, which we're affiliated with, it's a 600,000 member union, it's the largest in New York State, most of the country. We employ 4 or 5 lobbyists that are specific to higher ed. We have one that's dedicated to community colleges, and we will be up there, as Colleen said, on Monday and Tuesday. We bring 4 or 5 students with us and a number of our colleagues from various disciplines. We're also going to be going back in March with a couple of individuals, and all the K-12 people will be up there, as well as SUNY and Gumi and some of the other individuals. And it's more of a broad ranging type thing, but having that lobby effort from the largest union in New York State is really very helpful to all of us. And I would, anything that you would like us to do, we'd be happy to work with you on. Obviously, we're on the same page on the funding mechanism and so forth on the floor, and also the increase in FTE days. So those are all things that we really need to work together on if we're going to be successful.
But we just want to clarify that the union is talking about lobbying. When the college is talking about, we're talking about advocacy and other efforts.
Yes.
So that there's no confusion
Yes.
as to our proper role in lobbying.
Yes.
That's right, we do not, the college itself, answering district, does not have a lobby. Or lobbyist.
Okay, Colin, yes? Thank you very much. We now move along to the affiliated entities report. We're going to hear about advancement. Michael?
Yeah, as I asked Paula to cue up the presentation, I'm going to just pass around an updated version of the activities information that you currently have in your packet, as well as the donor list. And I just would point one, it's kind of a cool thing, I think, but in the donor list, there's another contributor to the Rise Up campaign, and it's our former coach, John Beeline, who's now the coach of the Cleveland Cavaliers, and he came in at a significant amount to sort of see that campaign, and that campaign has really yet to go public. So we're excited about where we are to start on that, and we're excited about where we're going to go. That is a year-long campaign. Does anybody have any questions or comments on statement activities for the donor list? If you don't feel comfortable now, we can of course take that offline. I can answer any questions. Okay. Seeing none, what I wanted to do is, I think Jeff was, I don't know if he did it on purpose or if he was foreshadowing intentionally, but we talked at the last financial committee meeting about our goals and metrics, and we talked about there wasn't a lot of meat on the bones. Well, this is the meat on the bones. Generally speaking, our goal is to increase our fundraising year to year by 20%. That seems like a lot. But when you look at the subsets of our goals and metrics that are in the packet that you have in your board meeting minutes, 2% scholarship increase, 2% naming and rate increases, all those things cumulatively will get us hopefully to 20% and actually exceed 20%. I want to point out, we've already heard about the Equity and Diversity Conference, the Students of Color in Higher Education Conference. I want to highlight this for a reason because you all know we're a small office. We currently have 4 people. I'll talk about some plans we have moving into the future. But how do we leverage the people that we have and issues that they're interested in to increase our capacity? So we're working with HR, working with the Office of Equity and Diversity, working with the Dean's Office. They came to us with this idea about a conference. So where does the foundation and institutional advancement support it? Sort of on the back end, right? So we set up the website where we receive the donations. We sponsored the initial contract that was required to bring the speaker in. Rather than the limited resources that are available in Equity and Diversity and in the Dean's Office, we put the money up to let that speaker be secured with the idea that we would raise enough money to be paid back. One of the things I just talked to Tracy about, so both Tracies will be interested in this, there have been some questions about scholarship for faculty and students that want to go. The foundation put up $5,000 with the expectation that that would be paid back. I talked to Tracy about it. What I'd like to do is at least put $2,500 forth initially to help scholarship some of those people. And if we have a lot of interest, we'll increase that to $5,000. So we're a sponsor of the program, but we did not pay for the program. It allows us to increase our capacity. Again, I give a lot of credit to the Tracy's and to Katrina and to Marvin and Metamerit. We talked about what they need to do to raise sponsorships. How do they push out their registrations? They've been hustling. I got to tell you, we're doing follow-up calls. We're doing very well. So we looked at the break-even point at the cost of the speaker. Of course, there's the costs associated with that, meals and food and things like that. But we expect to make money on this event. What are we going to do with that money? We're going to create an account within the foundation that supports equity and diversity programming, right? So as we all know, our budget is under strain, our enrollment is down. How do we find other ways to raise revenue to support the things that are important to our students and our staff and our faculty? So at the end of this process, when we gain these sponsorships and we raise a little money for it, there will be a fund within the foundation that the Equity and Diversity Office, HR, can access for professional development opportunities, other equity and diversity opportunities, bringing more speakers in. So it's trying to find a way to leverage the foundation, relationships that we have in the community to help sponsor and support programs that we're struggling to support as a college when we're in this environment in terms of our budget and enrollment. Paul, can you scroll up a little bit? And this is initially in chronological order according to the timeline of the year, so I just want to point that out. At the end, there's a lot of activities that you'll see that are either ongoing or forthcoming. You heard about the Joan Bozer Atrium naming. That will be an event. I put a note up there. This is Your Life. If you're old enough to remember that show, This is Your Life. Dan and I and some other folks were able to attend an event that was for the Theodore Roosevelt, in support of the Theodore Roosevelt Center, and they recognized Scott Bueller. And it was a really cool format. They brought people up and videos up, and they reflected on his past. We've had a lot of people approach us about wanting to participate in videos and the opportunity to comment on the legacy of Joan Bozer. So that is an event coming in spring. We have a date, but we're trying to work with the family to make sure it works with them. But that's another example of something that's coming up this spring. This annual scholarship luncheon has traditionally been a cost center, not a revenue center. We are attempting to try to find ways to raise a little bit of money out of that, maybe support for a keynote speaker. You know, in the past, we've done flower sponsorships at commencement. Why can't we do it for the scholarship luncheon? So that's another opportunity. Paul, if you can scroll up a little bit. The last lecture opportunity is something that I think is new. This is a concept that Dan brought to the college. I witnessed some of these when I was at UB. We have a soon-to-be retiring faculty, longtime faculty, who has been working with us on a very, very generous donation to college. And the idea is, in return, as part of what we want to do for that person, is give them an opportunity to have a lecture on any topic that they want. That event also becomes an opportunity for their colleagues to share and celebrate their legacy here, and also contribute to their legacy. So if that person is being generous and putting forth some support for the college, in this case most likely scholarship, their colleagues will be able to contribute to that as well. So that's another way. It's not just the gift that this person is contemplating, but it's also the support that their colleagues might come up with. We mentioned commencement. We really haven't had a sponsorship in the past. For the general commencement, we do raise a little bit of money. There's a flower vendor. If you've been to the commencement, they sell our students flowers and t-shirts to commemorate the event. The foundation sponsors that. There's a little bit of revenue that's raised there. What we're trying to pursue is somebody to support the alumni gift. That gift is funded out of student activity fees. But if we find ways to sponsor that, we can drive some of that money back into student programming in the future. And we think it's a good opportunity because you're hitting potentially 1,000 students in one fell swoop when they get that gift. Our Scholarship Golf Classic is always in the summertime, usually raises around $40,000 to $50,000. That's our goal. Of course, we're going to try to keep increasing that year to year. We haven't had a title sponsor for that one probably in almost 10 years, so we're looking at that. Many of you know about the Holidays event that is also referenced in this, that comes in the winter time during December. But what you may not know about is the Thurman Thomas football camp. Last year, 2 years ago we started it, we had about 600 participants. These are kids that live in the city that participate in youth football. And it brings them out to the South Campus. Our coaches run this program. We had about 600 kids 2 years ago. Last year we went to 1,500 kids over 3 days. Trustee 2 has been there with his son. He can speak to it if he wants to. But what we got this year was attention of the Buffalo Bills. We got the attention of the NFL. We got the attention of the Legends support organization that works with the alumni of the Buffalo Bills. We're starting planning a lot earlier this year. We expect that we're going to raise a lot more in terms of sponsorships because it is a really unique camp that we're doing. But I mentioned that first because the second, the thing right above it is a coaches clinic. The Youth Football League it's widespread across the city, but they've been partnering with the Bills and the NFL, and what the NFL and the Bills have said to them is you need to have, so much like we have teachers with credentials, you need to have coaches with credentials. You need to have coaches that are teaching proper tackling techniques and all this other stuff. So what we're talking about doing there is running that coaches clinic through continuing education. So it's not a foundation activity, but it's going to hopefully generate revenue through continuing education. So our folks would be presenting those coaches for a week, and then the following week they take those lessons and apply it during the camp. So there's some nice synergy there. And again, Last year, we broke even in the Thurman Thomas camp. The year before, we raised a couple $1,000. The idea this year is to really build that up through sponsorships and put on a world-class camp. Paul, can you show up a little bit? Last year, we had a moderately successful homecoming weekend. Albert, again, was a driving force behind that alumni weekend. There are potential revenue opportunities there for us. That has been a cost center. We have not generated revenue, but we are really re-engaging alumni for the first time in a long time. We work very hard on our database. We have a very, very good database from 2009 on. We're struggling with those older alumni who are now higher potential givers. And so we've been really working hard on that. Just this week, we discovered or were able to verify 9,000 alumni dating from 90 to 2009. So that was a significant step for us. When I stepped into the role, I was told there were 70,000 active alumni. What I found was there was 9,000 that we actually had verifiable addresses for. So we've been really working hard to try to build that up.
Before you move on, can I?
Sure.
So when you have these people coming in for alumni weekend, if we can identify the retiring professors that are going to be leaving and connect them, that maybe they do a video and maybe they help sponsor, I mean, how can we
It's a great point.
connect?
Actually, a convocation this year was the first time that I know since I've been in the space that alumni had a table outside, and we actually collected information on 50 faculty or staff alumni that we did not know we had.
That's awesome.
Right, so it's really more about engagement. Some people self-identify, some people need to be prompted, but that, in my opinion, having a table there for a couple hours and finding out we had 50 alumni within our ranks was a benefit, and it was no cost to us. But it's a really good point, Kate. We've talked in the past, the college used to do a gala. I did some analysis on that. A lot of the gala tables were purchased through ASC accounts in the past. So it's kind of like, we're recycling money. It wasn't new money. So we stopped that practice, and then over time, particularly through the transition when Dan arrived, it's really difficult to put on a gala with a small group that we have. But what we think we found is a sweet spot. Instead of doing a general college gala, what we started doing this year is we're going to focus on a programmatic event. So our alumni person, Sarah Lasky, who you've met, has formulated a committee working through the vision care department with their faculty and some staff, former staff, alumni. And I'm showing a goal there of $100,000. That is not my goal, that is their goal. They believe, based on their connections to industry, it's amazing to me how many people that came out of our vision care program who are running optical offices all over this region, from Rochester to south to Jamestown. It's a great program. We hope to do that, if it doesn't exceed our capacity, we hope to do that in the atrium. But that's a really high goal. The gala in its best year raised, the college's gala in its best year raised $75,000. But we hope that this is a model to move forward with different departments in different years. We think this is a cool one because if you think about what year we're sitting in and the relationship to vision, it's the 2020 Vision Care Reunion. So it's getting some cool activity on that. I think Jeff mentioned in his report, Giving Tuesday raised $10,500. Last year was about $8,400. So we did meet and exceed our goals. Thank you all for participating. We also tried some new things this year. We dedicated some hours to the Rise Up campaign. We dedicated another hour to fundraising for the scholarship that FFECC and AAECC have. Those actually produced some good results, and those monies go into those scholarship accounts. I want to mention I was at a advancement officer meeting for SUNY advancement officers last week, and one of the vendors was talking about it's wonderful to do the Giving Tuesdays on Giving Tuesday, but everybody does it. Where they're seeing a greater percentage of income come in are when you separate it out and do your own day, pick your own day. What we're contemplating is working with athletics and doing one for the Rise Up campaign in the spring that's dedicated to athletics, and that would go into their fund. So that's something to look forward to. As we're finishing our master planning process and academic master plan process, we're looking at what are those new opportunities for naming rights, for investments, for branding of spaces. I think everybody knows we have a great partnership with Citibank that did the Commons Lounge in STEM. These are just a couple of opportunities that are out there right now. We're currently doing these Building 3 and Building 4 projects with support from county money that Heidi worked with the county to find that had been sitting around unused and unspent. They allowed us to consolidate that, and we're actively pursuing those projects. I mean, we just met, I think, last week, and we're having another meeting after the board meeting today. But there's some cool furniture, there's some cool video monitor screens and things like that. So we're going to be approaching people about there's 4 opportunities to identify and brand student lounges. So if we can find those resources, I can go back to Penny and say, find something else with the county to drive the capital into if we can. So, and if it's not in time for this, we can drive that to other capital projects. You've heard about other of our larger naming rights. There's the downtown athletic facility, and there's the STEM building, and there's also the KITSI, which is the CATS Indoor Training Center that's at South Campus that we talked at, Jeff referenced with turf. I'll go really quickly through the ongoing activities. I want to I'll go through these all quickly, but I want to focus for just 1 second on the career services sponsorship opportunity. I was asked to speak at that SUNY conference that I referenced about this, and I've since been asked to now do this presentation for SUNY Quad. It's kind of cool. I'm taking a little pride in this. I've been in this space for only about 2 years, and there are people in that room that have been in this business for 30 years, and I taught them something that day, so that felt pretty good. What we've been finding is that most of the companies and businesses that are interested in interacting with the college, they want connectivity to our students. Why? Unemployment is really low. It's hard to hire people. We see people advertising on the radio and TV that we've never seen in our lifetimes in this area, and they're finding it very difficult. The traditional methods of posting a want ad don't work, or they're struggling to make it work. And we learned that through the city opportunity. The reason the Citibank opportunity worked for us is because of my relationship and partnership and the really forward thinking of those career services staff. Katie Marshall gets a lot of credit for this. They deliver the program that Citibank wants in that space. I don't have the staff to do it. It's not my job to deliver career service advice. So if I didn't have their support and their idea on this, we couldn't do the LinkedIn days that we do in that Citibank space. They do mock interviews in that space. They've gotten creative with our faculty on how you incorporate opportunities when cities on campus into curriculum, bring classes there so that they're included in that. So we're really trying to drive connectivity. Citibank is tracking and career services are tracking how that is impacting. What Katie leveraged that to was a program for other companies who don't maybe have the resources that Citibank has to create special relationships with the college. And that could mean the kinds of activities I'm talking about, but it's bringing them onto our campus, helping them find ways to engage our students out other than the traditional models, which were tabling in the cafeteria. If you've been to our cafeteria lunchtime, there's multiple tables. I'm not sure how effective that is anymore. That may not be how our students interact with people. It's about going to meeting our students where they are, right? And Katie gets a lot of credit. That is the model that other SUNYs want to steal from us. So that's the one I take a little bit of pride in. Jeff referenced the KITSI. We secured our, it's not, the ink is not, or the pen is not to paper yet, but we are in the midst of signing about a $5,000 sponsorship for ad space within the KITSI. That is a naming opportunity on the outside that we're also pursuing. Without a ribbon cutting, without a grand opening that we are planning, we have generated about $20,000 between January and April, and that's with 3 tenants, I think, at this time. The cost to run it for us is only $3,000 when you look at the staff that's required. So that's a $17,000 revenue opportunity without advertising the space. That was all done through word of mouth. We're getting ready to push hard to try to fill those hours up, and it can be available from 5 a.m. to say midnight or beyond if we find staff to staff it. Rise Up campaign I mentioned, we're about to actually kick that off in the next couple months. It's had a soft start. We're doing relatively well there. We had a good day during the Giving Tuesday hour. Some other examples of things that we have in the can. These are sort of low-cost, high-impact opportunities. Radiation therapy, dental hygiene, OTA. What we're doing is targeting some fundraising efforts to their alumni. Again, they hopefully are at a place in their career where they've had some success. They're now at a point where they can give back to the college. Those particular departments have strong current relationships with their alumni, so it's not like we're having to rebuild all those. We hope to build upon them, but we're really taking advantage of the opportunities they already have. And what we're trying to do there, and Kate, maybe this is part of your point, is tell stories. I think we've talked in the past about how the foundation supported some of our OTA students going to a national conference, and we were the only community college that had representation there. Those students couldn't have gone if we didn't find a way to support it. We're going to tell that story. We're going to tell that story to their alumni, and we're going to hopefully they'll be proud of that and want to give back. Some other quick things that we're looking at, we just did the annual report for the first time in about a year since Dan's been here. We got that out to get it out in time, but there are ad opportunities in there. We're going to do a mid-year report this year, which we haven't done in the past. Again, there's sponsorship and ad opportunities there. I just mentioned, we've talked about scholarship in the past. This is our heaviest load in terms of scholarship being available in the spring, looking towards the fall. So we're ramping that up. I think the emails just went out. If you're a reviewer, thank you. If you're not a reviewer and you want to help out, we could always use more people to look at those applications. And it's amazing because you learn a lot about our students, the struggles that they have, what they're dealing with in their own personal lives, what they've overcome to get here, and then we get to help them. I mean, and that's pretty amazing. We get to distribute resources to help them. So if you're interested in that, we certainly could use your help. There's a smaller late spring offering. That's something that the foundation took advantage of when athletics approached us and said, sometimes we've got a kid that's decided between Hudson Valley and Erie, and it might just take a $500 scholarship or a $1,000 scholarship. So we created, and that's not just for athletics, that's for kids with special talents, musicians, academics. So we do a light offering in the spring, and then we do a new offering in the fall as well. Nursing alumni is another one that we're working with, and we just started talking about that. Police Academy, again, is something that we think there's an opportunity there. A lot of those, we have thousands and thousands of current police with former cadets that went through there. They have no connectivity to that program, essentially, other than their upskilling opportunities. How do they support what we do there? Plan giving is something that we're ramping up. If you've never been to our website, maybe I should have included a link. We have some really good software that allows people to go into our plan giving, and there's a multitude of things that they can look at as they're thinking about retirement or if they're thinking about their legacy. There's a lot of really good information available there. We are, I think this is not a secret, but we've been working on the retirement incentive with the county. And information is going to go out from Human Resources. That will include the opportunities that we have at the foundation to create charitable trust annuities. The largest charitable trust annuity we had at the college, that person had zero affiliation with the college. They shopped with different people, and they found that our returns were pretty good, so they actually went with us. And then, of course, there's just other miscellaneous events. So that's it for my talk. I don't know if anybody's got questions. Sorry to throw that at you fast. I know we've been running real long today.
I think the focus on events is great. I mean, and they make sense, but often the return on those investments are not the highest. So I would just urge a look at planned giving, and not just an online way, but I mean, making those connections with all the people who may be retiring, trying to schedule meetings with them, because having talks is going to produce a lot more than sending them to a website. And then grants, outside grants that we could apply to. That's a whole huge piece that is not addressed here, and I know it's difficult with staffing, but maybe to help get some students, get them credit to help write grants. I'm not sure, but there's a lot of opportunity.
You triggered my last talking point, so thank you.
Okay.
I appreciate that, because I know it was part of the request. In the December foundation board meeting, they approved the opportunity for me to hire somebody on a foundation line. So that's no expense to the college. That will be the second foundation employee that the college has ever had, right? So we have Chris Jango, who does a good job of stewarding our scholarships. He also manages our budget. They're allowing me to hire somebody as a development officer. that will be focused on, to Kate's point, major gifts, working those alumni, doing more research on wealth indicators and things like that. They will support us in events. And Kate, to your point about events, it's this balance that we're trying to find. We have a lot of people pushing us at events, so we're trying to fulfill that need. Paula's office is certainly helpful to us in that regard. She particularly is helpful to us in that regard. So we feel that pain. It's one of the reasons why we push away from the gala. But our numbers will look good because we're having some really good success on some of the larger things that you talked about. And we'll have somebody focus on that instead of just all the day-to-day activities. And the grants office, the college has a grants office. They do a good job of supporting faculty. We do get some grants that come from foundations. Usually it's a faculty member that writes it. It's the grants office that supports it, edits it, submits it. We're going to have more capacity to help once this person arrives because we're looking for somebody with a little bit of that background as well. Any other questions, comments?
Like Chris is a foundation employee.
Yes, so he's been the one and only, he was the first.
Right.
And the one and only, this would be a second person. We're still, and I'll just throw this out there, we're still working on approving the job description with my board.
Right.
Once that's approved, we're gonna post it on the Association of Fundraising Professional website. We hope to get a good number of people in. We've already been getting people sent to us from our board. We hope to have that person in place relatively quickly. We don't have to sort of subscribe to some of the different paths that we go through in HR here that.
But you're looking for somebody that can help with grants though.
Grants, in specific if they have any fundraising experience in long-term campaigns in plan giving.
So you should also seek to get that posting to the Plan Giving Consortium who can put it out.
Okay.
I can give you a contact.
Sure, thank you.
Good, Mike.
Thank you.
Thanks. Okay, we'll go to old business. Any old business? We'll go to new business. If not, motion to go to executive session. Motion made. Thank you. So we're going to go to executive session and we'll take a quick 5 minutes break. Another bathroom.
Mike. Me.
So do I have a motion to come out of the executive session?
So moved?
Second? All those in favor?
Aye.
Okay. And then we have to wrap up.
I'll just bring everything. So at the executive, we should wait for, oh, you are here. So during executive session, the board reviewed the talent management agenda resolution and discussed some personnel matters. And the decision was made to table the resolution that's before us now and take it up at our next board meeting. And that's the sum and substance of our executive session.
Anybody move to adjourn? Move to adjourn? All those in favor?
Aye.
So, so we'll move to 162. If you can stay, if not, don't worry about it. We'll see.